Detective Harris had seen many gruesome crime scenes in his 15 years on the force, but nothing quite like this. The latest victim had been discovered in a dingy basement on the outskirts of town, her lifeless body arranged with eerie precision. The worst part? She wasn't the first. For the past 6 months, the city had been gripped by fear. The so-called collector had claimed 5 lives, each victim disappearing without a trace before their mutilated remains were found weeks later. Every corpse was adorned with a single, chilling detail, a missing body part replaced with an artificial replica, a glass eye, a porcelain hand, a wax ear. It was as if the killer sought to preserve their victims in a grotesque personal museum. Harris stared at the crime scene. The victim, a young woman in her 20s, had her left hand severed at the wrist. In its place was a mannequin's hand, its fingers painted a sickly shade of pink. The killer was escalating. Each murder was more brutal than the last, and Harris knew they were running out of time. Then came the break in the case. A surveillance camera near the victim's apartment had caught a shadowy figure lingering outside her building the night she vanished. The footage was grainy, but one detail stood out: an old leather satchel slung over the man's shoulder. With renewed urgency, the department combed through records, looking for known offenders with an affinity for body modification, medical training, or taxidermy. One name surfaced: Victor Langley, a reclusive artist with a history of mental illness and an obsession with anatomical sculptures. Harris wasted no time. They tracked Langley to a decrepit house on the outskirts of town. The moment they stepped inside, the stench of decay hit them. The living room was a nightmare, a grotesque gallery of preserved limbs, glass eyes, and plaster fingers, each labeled with a name. Then a creaking sound. A shadow moved in the hallway. Harris barely had time to draw his weapon before Langley lunged at him, scalpel in hand. The struggle was brief, but vicious. The detective barely managed to overpower him, pinning him to the ground as backup flooded the room. Langley was arrested, his twisted collection catalogued as evidence. The city breathed a sigh of relief, but Harris knew he would never forget what he had seen. Even behind bars, the collector's legacy would haunt him forever. Some trophies are best left unclaimed.